Welcome, everyone. We're so glad that y'all are here tonight to celebrate with us in this amazing historic building, the J.J. Roberts Museum. When Linda Stewart talked today about finding potential in historic places, Greg Perkle, an attorney here in Tupelo, he sees the potential in this historic place and wants to turn it into something fabulous. So we're here tonight to see the raw potential in historic preservation and what it can be. So I'm going to start with thank yous, and thank you, the biggest thank you, and a big round of applause goes to Greg Perkle for his vision for this amazing historic place. And his right-hand man, Josh Riley, who we are trusting to service in every way imaginable, turn this into this beautiful area. And start with recognizing our conference committee. Most of the folks here tonight are here to Listen Up. Mississippi has historic places that have a story to tell conference. So Joyce D, shout out. Our fearless leader, she doesn't say no to anything. We're going to have this event that none of us can even pronounce. And she said, sure, let's do that. So if you're on the committee, if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand and waving, y'all have done an amazing job. A subset of fabulousness came down here today and created this fantasy land of preservation for y'all. So I just wanted to mention Tracy Proctor, Amber, Erica, Jesse, Josie, Drew, and Jared. Y'all are wonderful volunteers, and this is amazing gift that you're doing this tonight. Thank you. So have y'all been enjoying the food? We came up here to plan this conference, and Amber and I just happened to go to Herman's Outlaw Kitchen and saw this amazing local farm-to-table type atmosphere, and so this is what we want for our conference. And then I called to talk to Chef Mitchell, and he said, well, we're having a Boston spread. And I said, of course we are. So it was East meets South tonight with this delicious spread of food. Hope y'all had some Yalabusha beer. Andy brought that all the way from Water Valley for us. He's a beautifully historic building. Water Valley is going to be one of our award recipients tomorrow. We couldn't be more proud of the renaissance that is taking place in that historic town. Lavino said, of course I'll bring the wine. Nobody told us no. It's an amazing thing. And then, kind of maybe an unusual shout out, but Busy Lab, we kept them really busy. Just thought I might want to say that. Mississippi Heritage Trust is such a lovely group of people, and I think it's something about coming together with like-minded people. So we have many of our board members here tonight. If you wouldn't mind just kind of raising your hand so folks will know that you're here. Look at this great turnout. These are folks from all around the state that make preservation a priority every day. And I know we have a number of members here tonight too, but if you're not a member, we can change that. It's very easy. Go on our website, pick up a membership brochure at the back table. We want you to be part of our club. So we struggled a little bit. You know, we did this amazing conference and all these wonderful speakers who, by the way, have done this for Bosom Spread and Yalabusha Beer, and really appreciate that. But we struggled a bit in this event because we knew what we wanted to do, but it was the hardest thing of the whole conference was to figure out how to pronounce this. So we have it, because Tupelo is such a cosmopolitan city, Carlton Wall, who actually speaks Japanese, helped coach us last night and to understand exactly what we were planning to do tonight. So Carlton, would you mind? Are you here, Carlton? You're somewhere. Come on up and pronounce this fabulous event.
Glad to be able to contribute to such an awesome event going on in Tupelo. So the Japanese, it's always consonant vowel, always. So it's Pecha, Kucha. So again, and it's not actually a Japanese word. It's an onomatopoeic sound. And if you're like, Carlton, what are you talking about? The American equivalent would be yickety yak. So.
Okay, so everybody say it with me. Pecha Kucha. I think I still got it. Thank you for all of them. So what an amazing group of speakers we have here tonight. They've come from all over the state to be with us. Before we get started, I did want to say we have some bad weather that's coming our way, and we're keeping an eye on it. At present, it looks like it is thunderstorms, and so we may be in for some dramatic rain while we're here in the J.J. Rogers building, but we are monitoring it on the Weather Channel, and if it gets any worse, we will certainly make sure that you're all informed. Y'all are brave, intrepid preservationists to come out on this rainy night. There are lower levels to this building where we could take shelter. It's a pretty significant space, but I know some of you are worried about that, and I did want to address that concern. Okay, so our first speaker, the only one of our speakers that has Pecha Kucha experience, Malcolm White with Mississippi Development Authority. Malcolm, where'd you go? You're up.
I was expecting this long introduction. So. I don't know, you know. So, literally, you're supposed to just take off and go. I could talk endlessly about this building and the similarities between what I'm going to show you, and it's a total coincidence. So, this is a building in downtown Jackson built in circa 23. That's the old Merchants Company. Actually, it's the G&O Freight Depot. And in 1983, my brother and I were looking for a place to open up a gathering place, and we found this place. Going from bad to worse. But anyway, it's a gorgeous old building. I would talk about the architecture, but I don't know anything about it. It's a two-story brick warehouse that we found vacant in 1983, and we began to come up with great ideas. So my brother and I decided we'd open up a restaurant. How about those legs, my friends? You don't see that anymore. Anyway, so in 1985, we hung that homemade sign back there that I painted, and we pulled up a good-looking car and we posed. And this is in the early days. That's my dad. Harold White was president of Northeast Community College. He loaned us $5,000 because he thought that he wanted to see his sons have some kind of work, some kind of day job. This is my brother Hal, who we lost in March a year and a half ago. But we are a family business, and that's myself there with Vivian, my ex-wife, who lives in Oxford and is a great artist. And this is my daughter way down here on the far right corner, poking out. She was raised in this building. She's now 29, if that helps put this in perspective. And I'm 63, so there you go. So we took this old warehouse and we built the bar, and we learned, more legs, we learned that the building had a lot of importance and symbolism, but we also learned that if we took our show on the road outside the building, it would also increase our awareness. So we would often take our food, like the chef tonight, to off-site locations and participate in food festivals. But here we are actually in the first week that we opened, my brother and I, in the kitchen that we built with our own hands. I'm sorry this is rumbling, it sounds awful to me. But we actually hired a friend of ours, and the three of us built this add-on kitchen to the back of this building, built in 1923. And here I am preparing the first pot of soup at Hal & Mal's in the kitchen that we built. And we had this philosophy that Jackson needed a gathering place. It needed a place where locals could gather, where nonprofits could raise money, and where community could sit down and have conversations around food, and around libations. Sylvia was our first cook. She stayed with us almost 35 years. That's cornbread there on the stove. And we began to cook food and have music, and again, welcome the community into a public space. In fact, when we got this place, and I don't have any of the earlier internal photographs, they looked exactly like this place, except that we had a concrete floor. This is John Maxwell, the actor, writer. He ate the first meal that we served in 1985. He ate an open-faced roast beef sandwich, and I served him. And so here we are. We did a lot of music over the years at Hal & Mal's. Certainly B.B. King was one of the early acts that we featured. As you can see, I was working part-time in Nicaragua undercover for the U.S. government, and Mr. King didn't know it, but he was happy. But and this is another thing we learned, that not only did the building have really an important footprint, and that what went on inside the building was great, but we also figured out a way to start using the outside of the building, and we began hosting street parties and street dances. This was a fundraiser for the late great bluesman Sam Myers, featured here on the left. He was in trouble with the IRS, and so we threw this street party, and where these steps are here is where the stage was. So this, the Merchants Company, who were the last tenants before we got it, had their offices on this end of the building, downstairs and upstairs, sort of like if you go up to the restroom, you'll see sort of the built-out part. Then we added railings. We took the old sliding freight doors, cut them in half, and made doorways all the way down the front of the restaurant. The sign that says restaurant was actually salvaged from an old restaurant in Algiers, Louisiana, and I drug it across the ferry and put it there. To the right of the Hallamau sign, we have an outdoor courtyard that we took actually one sort of square end of the building where the roof had fallen in, and we elected not to rebuild the roof, but rather just to make it open air, and we've gotten an awful lot of mileage out of that. These are just exterior shots of the building with cars and sort of the foliage that we planted over the years at the entranceway there. But again, the building had no running water, no electricity, no plumbing, no heat, no air. It was just a giant warehouse. This is a great shot of it on the north end. And it, to this day, is owned by the state of Mississippi, and we're just tenants. And we've been leasing it since '83. We've probably bought the building 3 times over, and we've spent at least $500,000 to transform it from a place like this to a place where you might eat lunch. This is me at Christmas. This is the outside courtyard piece that I mentioned earlier, where we have exposed brick, and then above me is open air. Chris knows, he's been there a few times, he can tell you about it. But anyway, so this is an old sign that we made. This is an interior shot of what it looks like today. So we went from this, where we are now, to this, what you see before you, in about 4 years and a few $1,000s. But we built all the walls, we put in all the treatment, all the furniture, and again, it is somewhat successful according to lore. Hallamau, thank you very much.
Okay, we're off to a roaring start. Our next Pecha Kucha speaker is Jennifer Bond with Mississippi Department of Archives and History.
Okay, well, I can see I was too ambitious in putting mine together because I have multiple pictures on each slide, but we're going to talk about the 3 houses in my life that have been brought from a state of not livable to a state of livable, or, well, 2.5 that have been brought to a state of livable. It's only been since putting this together that I've realized how I started to become a preservationist. It was from the house that I grew up in that my dad built, and I'll show you that one, which was started as a Navy triplex. My dad was in the Navy, he was an engineer, and he cut them in 3 and moved them out to a 7-acre property that we had in the Piney Woods in Florida. And I grew up in a Christian boarding home. My parents operated a Christian boarding home. So the first year or so went pretty well. This is how it ended up in the first year. All of those pieces have been put back together in different ways. And he took down all the chimneys, and all that brick has been cleaned and stacked and ready to go. And he was able to do the house with all that brick. We lived in a trailer. That's me that my mom is holding. That's my brother and sister and my dad and mom all looking wayfish. We lived a very waifish life now that I look back on it. By the way, my dad transferred these from slides, but instead of scanning them, he took them with his iPhone on projecting them onto the wall. So some of them are a little weird. Anyway, he had his mother and my other grandmother out cleaning those bricks. They were in their 70s, and I have carried on that tradition. That's my dad. He built this Count Rumford fireplace that he researched, and it's a certain type of fireplace. He also laid all this brick, and that's me helping him lay that brick. So he wanted me to make sure to show his scaffolding, which is not OSHA approved. He was living on the edge out there with his clay pots. So he's putting on the brick, and here we have, about 5 years later, he's climbed this pine tree, which was the tallest tree, and he later got hit by lightning, and he took this picture down to the front. And this is the way it looks today. It's a livable house. They added shutters, which I did not approve of, but I have expressed that to them, and they don't care. So about 30 years later, my next door neighbor was doing laundry, and her dryer exploded, and their house burned, and I decided to buy it. Because I said, well, the fire didn't get through the roof, and it's got great floors, and it's got these great steel casement windows, and so the timing was terrible. I was down on the coast a lot after Katrina, but it was also in the middle of the building bubble, and there were people looking at it, and I thought, oh, this is going to get turned into apartments or something horrible. So I bought it, and so this is what I started out with. And I decided, I didn't really make as many changes as you would think. We did have to take out all of the sheetrock. It was a 1952 house, great little ranch house, and we did have to take out all the sheetrock. The fire went through the attic, although it did not get through the roof. And one contractor said to me, you need to tear down this house and just salvage the floors, and that's what you should do. So, is my 20 seconds run? Well, I can keep talking, I don't care. All the windows almost every pane of glass in this house had cracked from the fire, so I reglazed all the windows and put new panes of glass. I finally found a contractor who was willing to work on it, and that's them up there running around on those rickety rafters. They replaced all that in the back. And this is what it looked like about a year later. And like my dad, I moved fairly quickly in the demolition phase, and then it took a little longer as we got going. But I had a lot of help. I got my dad, who was 70 years old at the time, and my mom, who was in her late 60s, and my husband. We're all working on the house and salvaging what we can. The only place we couldn't salvage was a replacement window. It was actually a vinyl window, and so we put in this glass block in the bathroom. And we also salvaged all the trim and all of the doors, scraped all of those down, and I spent a lot of time in the backyard there. That's my little niece, so we're passing it down. That's my dad again. They came back a second time. I didn't run them off. And that's David Preziosi, if you remember. Many of you have been in MHT for a long time, helped me a lot on this house. My brother was getting rid of all of his kitchen cabinets at the time, so I took those, and my dad found ways to put them into the kitchen. And we also salvaged the wood ceiling that had been a wall. It had been a wall in the house. Like I said, I reglazed all the steel windows, which is tedious work, but don't be scared of reglazing windows. It's tedious, but it just takes a little time. We also found some cool mid-century modern light fixtures in the Hoops house in Port Gibson, which was being torn down, unfortunately, but they gave those to me. So this is what it looks like, and it's rented to the director of the Welty house now. I think I hear rain. So we only made one modification to the floor plan, and that was to open the doorway to the kitchen to a larger cased opening. So it's fairly minimal alterations to this house, even though it was a lot of work. So about last year, this house, which backs up to mine, I live in Fondren in Jackson, by the way, and it's a great neighborhood, but we have some house issues, as you can see. This guy had bought it and took all the brick off, and it made me really sad, and it had sat there for 2 years, and it came up for sale, and I got him down from 60 to 25,000, which I'm pretty happy about. I would be happier if it was 15, but anyway, this is why I bought it. It's got these great cabinets, original bathrooms, wood lath and plaster, and so we bought it and we salvaged what brick we could. Unfortunately, about half the brick had been taken, so we had to add some new brick. So within a few months, we had the masons were out and ready to go. We did have to do a lot of termite damage issues on the sills, but that was all done by this point. So these are my masons. I always like to take pictures of men and without their shirts on, and I think they did pretty good. It's not a complete match, as you can see at the bottom, compared to the rest of the wall, but it's close. And that door always caught my eye even before I bought this house. I always loved that door. So we are making a few modifications, mainly because the kitchen was so tiny. We're expanding that into the butler's, or I guess it was a butler's pantry. We're not really sure. Anyway, this house had been cut up into 2 apartments, so it's kind of a strange floor plan. We're also adding a porch on the back, which I think every house should have, a screen porch. And I've gotten my 76-year-old father now and my 70-year-old brother-in-law. Were just here last week, and we were working on the windows, and we got all the windows in. So now I have to go reglaze all those windows. So that's where we are, and I think that's the last slide, but this is just to show that it doesn't have to be a mansion, and it doesn't have to be a rich person. Just go out and save some houses.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was amazing. Stella Gray, you ready to be our next Pecha speaker? Okay. Stella Gray, old friend and former MHT director.
Well, and I've been duking it out with Erica about who's president of Lolly's fan club.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for everything you do.
Mutual Admiration Society.
Absolutely. All right, I'm off the clicker. I'm tickled to be here. And hey, Brian, I haven't seen you in 100 years. And Ernesto, I saw you somewhere. There you are, honey. I hope you can't hear me talk to this one. So it's been a few years since I practiced preservation in the real life world that y'all are, and but we're all card-carrying preservationists. And I have been a mama on a mission. I ran the Mississippi Heritage Trust for 5 years. That brought me to Mississippi 17 years ago. And I met and fell in love. Hold on. Is it going to change?
Get close on the mic.
I could take my shoes off, I guess. No, okay.
Go to the center.
I'll take my shoes off. Is that better? Maybe? Okay. I need to kiss it. Got it. So here I am in Mississippi 17 years ago, ready to do the preservation work. And I quickly fell in love with the first person I met in Mississippi and married him. Check. And we had some negotiations. I became a Presbyterian. He became an Alabama fan. And he sold his non-historic house, and we bought a historic house. Ready? Check. It has a check. And the house needed to not been touched before. We're the third family to live there since 1904 when it was built. So the next picture shows the selling point on the house. This beautiful staircase. And the floors have been covered with shag carpet. It was all the rage. You can see the 1950s wall coloring and wallpaper. And the next picture will show the front room, which is the opposite direction. Okay, so it had stairs, check. And then it had this beautiful front room, check. And then I also needed an electric socket on the floor, and 3 in a row. There you go, check. And then one more. But why would I want a socket in the floor? Well, the next picture will show you that I needed a Christmas tree in the floor, because in my, life seems very linear when you look in retrospect, but this was not a straight path, but I'm going to describe it as if it was a straight path. So I needed to have children coming down those stairs on Christmas morning to a Christmas tree. So cue the children. We got somebody coming up, baby number 1 and baby number 2. Got a little more chaotic, So then we're moving forward and we're clicking. And we have the moments that I was living for. We got another picture. And the most recent one is going to hit, because my girls are now 10 and 7. So Lolly had asked me to speak about rearing little preservationists. And Donovan Ripkema, who is an acclaimed real estate developer who came around to preservation the opposite direction than probably a lot of us have. Well, Dan Camp has come the direction that he has. But anyway, his comment was that when a neighborhood has really hit its stride and its revitalization swing, and Belhaven, where I live, always had levels of success, and probably about the time I was moving there, it wasn't ever in threat of going away, but it was definitely having a transition. But, and I live on State Street, so, and that's a busy corridor that some people don't consider Belhaven, but we consider we're part of the neighborhood. But the point is that, when you see mamas or daddies strolling babies down the street, your neighborhood has hit its high point, or it's in a good place. So I'm on a mission to live my life in an old neighborhood and practice what I preach by living it. Next picture, I think. So I'm going to brainwash my girls. My little girls are going to be preservationists whether they like to or not, and we have about 5 hits in a row of the details of my house. And they can't help but know that there is quality building materials from a long time ago, and we just have some good details that I'm sure you have in your old house too, but these are mine. And I think there might be one more, the pretty newel post. And so one way that I know they're gonna, whether or not they choose an old home, they'll know the feeling of it, right? So the next slide is gonna show that we play I Spy all the time on those architectural details. And I started out with these, and there's one more slide, a National Trust pair of books that called Architecture Counts and something shapes. And my girls knew what brackets were and what a semicircle was based on what a segmented arch looked like. And so they're the books. And to this day, we'll still play I Spy based on these details driving down the road. Okay, another way that I'm brainwashing them is what I call orienteering. My children are going to know how to use a map, as opposed to the technology age of children that just listen to the directions from their iPhone on how to get somewhere. We unfold ours, and we have 2 more pictures that just illustrate when we travel, we try to find we'll go to the downtown, to the historic core, and then we radiate out. It's just a ritual. So they'll understand the development of a town, whether or not they realize it or not. So next up is, I just encourage photography. And that's the way they get to hold an iPhone. They don't use it for any other purpose than maybe a math app and snapping a shot. And then we, I'm sure your school, where your children or grandchildren are going to school, promote recycling. It's an undeniable thing, and you can continue. The bragging rights that my children have, that if you live in an old house, then you have too, is that there's a third picture, that success comes in restoring your old home, and that's the ultimate bragging rights for recycling with your schoolmates. Continue, please. Thank you. At our school where we go, I've tried to infiltrate the system. I'm still working on Lolly's Live It and Learn It that MHT has, that curriculum to embed it. But right now, an architect friend and I have just completed the second year of a design charrette tied into 8th grade science. And they have a city planning component with 8th grade science and tied into it's amazing what you can do when you agree to chair an event, and I chaired an event last spring and tied in a design charrette. So anyway, it's an annual thing now, and so this is, there's a few more pictures, but it's all about city planning and making choices about what your community would be like. So that conversation happens at 8th grade at our school, so maybe if you don't have it, you can work it in. All right, next up, I got a pop quiz. What does a campfire and historic house have in common? Anyone? Anybody? All right. Ready? Ghost stories. So the next series of slides will show, there are about 4 of them, will show good friends of mine that this past spring break went camping over the s'mores at the campfire, were telling ghost stories about the house that they were going to tour the next day. And they did that 3 days in a row, and the children loved it. And you can see the daddy staged this, but in that first picture, there wasn't anybody at that table. And in the second picture, he took it after somebody came to sit back down, but the children had gone upstairs, so he documented the ghost in the house. But anyway, I'm stealing this. I cannot wait to do it. You can do it in your own home, or you can do it on a trip. So, and I think we're wrapping up. What do we have last? So I've tried to capture moments for them with the texture and to create the context, all those layers that are the details with the girls. So hopefully they'll know it whether they realize it. So I'm just a proud mama on a mission, and I have 2 more pictures of my darling daughters. Thank you so much.
Tom Howard, you're up next. Howard and Associates from Oxford, thank you for being here. Take it away.
I'm almost as tall as Stella Gray. Since each slide's supposed to be 20 seconds, I thought I'd come up with a title that would take 20 seconds to read. I put together a presentation based on what I've been doing lately, and those of you I've talked to know that I've been to China a couple of times. So I'm going to put that together with Oxford and talk about economic development, historic preservation, social justice, and what we consider the three-legged stool of sustainability, which is where I've been coming from lately, and cultural tourism, which in the context of Oxford has a lot to do with William Faulkner. And so how do you create an opportunity to build your economy based on the historic assets that you have as a community, and what are the implications of those opportunities for a sustainable future, and how do you build real sustainability? In Mississippi, this is the LQC Lamar House. I really thought I would probably just do some of our projects so it'd be a big advertisement for Howarth and Associates, but I decided that would be crass and commercial. And so I avoided that. And so we've got to take flawed heroes and make of them what we can. And in terms of economic development and cultural tourism, what could be more sustainable and acceptable than a bookstore? And it helps if your brother has one. So we create an opportunity to take a faux colonial redo of one building and make it come to life. Meanwhile, we've got Courthouse Square with a Confederate monument, so all of our blisters and flaws come together with all of our positive attributes too, and we try to emulate them, some of them in an awkward way, as this hotel on the lower part, clearly references. You get the architectural allusions here. Fortunately, this one's been demolished recently, and there are 3 more hotels under construction in Oxford to exploit the opportunities for cultural tourism trading on the courthouse. This is a recent trip that I've done working with the Center for Leadership in Global Sustainability at Virginia Tech, where I'm a fellow. Just came back from China with a group of architects to Yunnan province, which in the slide on the right is at the very bottom above Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, and in the left-hand side, we were up in the upper left corner of that. Lijiang, Qingjela, which is Shangri-La actually in American parlance. And you see Lijiang is an example of cultural tourism run amok. If you look in the right-hand corner, upper right-hand corner, this beautiful picturesque village that is a UNESCO World Heritage Site has been exploited and developed for tourism. And Shizhou Village, where we also spent some time, is the next frontier for that. Beautiful bi-architecture on the left and the fields on the right with the ultimate mechanization of farm equipment. They don't yet have industrial farming there, and yet this is what the local market looks like with the local produce. So it's just unbelievable what comes out of these fields. But at the same time, you wonder, where's the economic justice? These people are starving almost, working in the fields to sustain this way of life that we think is so appealing. In Shizhou Village, the architecture in the top is being replaced with new construction on the right that emulates exactly what was there 40, 50, 100 years ago. Down on the left, that was a new version of a McMansion. All of the new buildings look just like the old. There's no authenticity to it, but they're trying to build back new and letting these old buildings go away. Why, you ask? Because they can't get title. The Chinese government can't get title out of the families. It's like Louisiana down there. And at the same time, they are exploiting every energy opportunity in the upper right, geothermal moisture, solar thermal, and the landscape, they still respect. And if you look in the right, stairs up to the Great Wall with the tree in the middle, and a house in the middle of Beijing with a tree that they left as they added on all around it, preserving this pristine landscape. And in Shangri-La on the Tibetan Plateau, where in January 11th, 340 buildings, the 70% of the old town, you can see it in the lower left, was burned, and yet they managed to save a little bit of the town. Planning is being done from places as diverse as Shanghai to a group of architects on the right-hand side, shown here in a Tibetan house where we visited. And we're trying to make this come back. At the same time, sustaining these resources is challenging. We architects are accustomed to thinking about ecological sustainability and in economic sustainability. We're not so good at thinking about the social part. But historic preservation is right in the center of all of this in the Venn diagram. If you bring all of these together, historic preservation is where it's at. And ultimately, this elaborately carved Tibetan house for this simple Tibetan woman using, admittedly, not very sustainable amounts of timber resources dragged by yaks and yak hybrid cattle is the future there. Thank you.
Wanderlust. Representative Steve Holland, you are up next.
In 1866, the legislature, in their infinite wisdom, took a piece of Chief Etowamba County and Chief Pontotoc County, and if you look at the code book count, created General Robert Edward Lee County, Mississippi. So welcome to Lee County. We're glad to have you. I first came in this building in 1958, I believe it was. I came with my grandfather in this majestic old building. We were farmers, and my daddy bought barbed wire and brick siding from the Rogers family in this building. And I shall never forget the first time, Buddy Palmer, Mr. Rogers let me ride that certainly not OSHA approved elevator right back there where the boards are, and go up to the second floor and see all the goodies that were up here. It was absolutely amazing. Second amendment I ever dealt with in the Mississippi legislature in 1984 was an amendment that said that the Mississippi Fair Commission, no matter what they wanted to do, could never ever can poo-poo tear down the first National Guard armory ever built in the state of Mississippi. And I don't know, the Republicans took over, as y'all well know, and they've left me in the dark because I'm a yellow dog Democrat. But I hope it's still standing. Is it still on the fairgrounds, Ken? It died? What did he say? It's been restored. Praise God. We Democrats must have passed the bond issue, and I didn't even know it. When my wife and I married in 81, I believe it was. I can't remember. I really can't. 81. We restored the second oldest house in Robert E. Lee County, which was built in 1877. And I can tell you, it was an old town hotel right on the railroad. And we loved it, and we spent a lot of money, way more than we had to preserve it. But I even kept the outhouse in the backyard and restored it. And the fact of the matter is, I've been in the legislature ever since I've been married. And my wife said, I can tell you this house is cool in the summer and damn cold in the winter, so we fixing to get rid of it, and we did. But we moved on. I want to tell you about my latest project on my farm. My mama's named Sadie, my daddy's named Jay. Our farm was always called Sadie J Farm. That's pretty original, isn't it? That's my mama's house back over there on about a 7-acre lake. Move that thing forward. I don't know anything, period, about technology. So, you know how to move it? Move it on. Unfortunately, my brother crossed the chilling waters of Jordan in May of 2009, 2 weeks after discovering he had colon cancer. And we'd been talking for years about starting our own graveyard. You're really not a real historical preservationist till you get your own graveyard on the land that your great-granddaddy founded. So we cremated him, put his ashes out there, and started our own family cemetery. And my mama got all discombobulated because he was out there by himself. And I said, hell, Mama, he don't know anything about being out there by himself. So we dug her parents up from the other cemetery and moved them out there, and we got out there now. So it just seemed like there ought to be a church out there. Well, you go trying to buy a church and move it around here. Hard to do. Most churches are not for sale, you know, Robert? But that's a piano I learned to play on. My grandparents paid $50 a month, Doyce, till they got that sucker paid off. And guess what? I reclaimed it out of an old Methodist church where I played the piano for 25 years, and I've got it in the chapel, and it's working. But I went by, yeah. I've got underwear that's 25 years old. I don't throw anything away. We had a wedding there May 10th. First wedding in the newly restored church. I went by one day and saw an excavator in front of this church right there. And I said, oh my God. Well, it'd been out of business for about 10 years and was falling in the middle, the floor. So I called the last person that I knew that went to church there. She was, there's our graveyard. She was 87 years old, and she said, well, Steve, the termites have eaten that church up. You can't do anything with that church. We're going to tear it down. I said, oh, no, you're not. Give me the name of the chairman of the deacons. You know, the Baptist church is 100% run by the deacons, they say. And so I called him up. He was 87. And he said, you can have the church if you can get it off